Okay, so I want to get started in this tutorial course with going over our reference. So over here I got a few really good reference images that I actually took myself. I took them in Italy. So basically the reason I say that is because when you create materials, it is very important and also very useful if you have high quality and high resolution reference like this. So this is the reference image that I got. Now, before we go over it, just some quick and shameless self-promotion. So I actually own a website which is called artreference.org. And on this website, you can find a reference like this that I take of a bunch of stuff, and it's all free. So you do need to make like an account, but that's just so that you can get 5 free downloads per day. And it's all this kind of reference where you have like multiple close-ups, distances, and there's just like a bunch of stuff in here. I think also my rock is probably also in here somewhere. Oh no, but this one is from the same area. So here you can see. So I just wanted to show you this website. And now let's just actually start with the tutorial. So why did I choose this rock? So I choose this rock because it actually, even though it looks a little bit interesting or strange compared to most rocks, I think it actually covers a lot of valuable information that we can use to create a graph. So as you can see over here, there is a lot going on in this rock. It has larger shapes, it has small shapes, it has cracks, it has different types of dirt buildup, and there's just a lot of really interesting stuff. And I think it will show a bunch of techniques, all the techniques from creating general rock shapes, breaking up rock shapes, creating cracks, also cracks that are very specific, as you can see over here. They're almost like square. They're like these square type of cracks. It's quite interesting. And also how to do very interesting like dirt buildup and everything, and water erosion and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I chose this one, because I think it can look very interesting. And I'm also confident that we can make this one almost one-on-one with real life. I say almost because it's still a procedural material. Making a procedural material exactly one-on-one is often very difficult, but you don't expect it to, as long as it looks just as good. So I got these few reference images here. They are only 4, but it shows more than enough. So it shows our big details. It shows like some very clear smaller cracks and how that they work, and that they have like this square formation. But it also shows like some micro noise and everything that is on the rock, which this is a very interesting micro noise. I guess it comes from the water. Normally I know how erosion and everything gets made on rocks. But in this specific case, I think it's just the water, because the erosion is very inconsistent. It's very interesting, quite strange. And over here, if you want, although we will not make it this like small stones in here, it's just like a little bit extra. So for this reference, what I will be doing is I will always just have this on my other screen, and whenever I need to show you something, I will just go ahead and I will drag it over. So what we're going to do is we are going to first start by setting up a scene in Substance Designer. Now in Substance Designer, because this is going to be a beginner tutorial, I will go over everything. Now, but I do assume, or well, not assume, I do recommend, I should say, I do recommend that you have a very basic understanding already of Substance Designer. So this will be between beginner and intermediate, this tutorial course. So I will not go over every single button, but I will go over everything in quite a lot of detail. So in here, what we want to do is we have a graph. This is my layout, by the way. If you have a different layout, you can simply drag your windows around. But we have over here, we have a graph, we have our library, and in the library we can find all of our nodes over here. We have a 2D view, and our 2D view is where we later on will be able to see our 2D texture. Our parameters is where we will get all of our settings, and our explorer is where we will get all of our save files. Now, right now everything is blank, so it's much easier if I just go ahead and create a new substance and show you. So if we go to File and New Substance, we can go ahead and we can create a new substance. Now you have plenty of different modes that you can choose here, PBR modes, everything from metallic roughness to specular glossiness to scan based, and also just like empty ones. We will use specular glossiness. This is because I'm a Marmoset Toolbag and Unreal Engine 4 user. And both of these programs use metallic roughness. Although technically Marmoset Toolbag can also handle specular and glossiness, but that's another story. So PBR metallic roughness is the one that you want to select. The graph name. What shall I name it? Let's do seaside underscore rock. Yeah, seaside underscore rock should be fine for this tutorial course. Size mode is absolute, which means that it just that we select the size mode and we select it to be 2048 by 2048. Now, don't worry, later on what we can do is we can simply upscale it to 4K for our final renders. And the format relative to parent, you can just leave that. Now over here we have all of our maps. That is all totally fine. So all we need to do now is we need to press OK. And there we go. Now, this is the view that we get. If you have all the substances, you do not get these files. So this is part of the new one where they are like the default files. But I do assume that you have the latest substance. My substance is 2019, I believe. Oh no, sorry, I updated. It is version 10.1.1. That is my Substance Designer that I'm currently using, depending on when you are watching this tutorial course. Now, having this view, you can see over here you have your 3D view where you can have your little cube. You can just use your left mouse button to rotate it around, middle mouse button to scroll. I'm actually not going to use this because I always use Marmoset Toolbag for my previewing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this. Next to this, we are ready to get started, I would say. So yeah, now that we have created our graph, we also have a lot of buttons over here. But I rarely actually use this top bar. Basically what these buttons are is they are the same as when you right click, Alt Node, and you get these buttons. They are exactly the same, but then they're all the way up here. So they're like buttons that you tend to use a lot, and it's just like a quick selection. Now there are a few things that you will see me using. This is something that I've been using so long that I do it without even thinking. So I will make sure that I keep it in mind. But next to your right click, where you can add a lot of nodes, what you also have is you also have space. When you do space, you can basically type in whatever is in the library. So I can type in, for example, TRA, and I get transform 2D and stuff like that. And you just get a lot of nodes. Once you get familiar with Substance Designer, you will know what all the nodes are called, and that is the technique that you will be using. I would say that for this tutorial, it is actually good practice if you do the same as me, where you press space and find it, because it helps you remember the nodes more if you keep typing them in. And I think it's just a quick benefit to learn the nodes very quickly. We will mostly be using pretty much basic nodes, so you don't need to worry about that too much. Now, over here, of course, we have our library. It has like a bunch of stuff in here, but I'm not gonna go over that. As I said before, this is not going to be a complete, absolute beginner tutorial. So what I will do is I will instead dive right in, and we can start by creating our material. For that, I'm just gonna move over here to the side. And what we'll be doing is we first need to create some very large shapes. Now, if you look at this rock, just think as if that there aren't any cracks or anything. All you would get is this wobbly shape that is creating the rock, and sometimes it has like some sharp cuts in there. And that is the first thing that we need to make. Now, creating a rock material in the beginning, the thing is that it is often quite difficult to really see what is going on, because it looks like nothing when we start creating this. However, later on in the material, it will actually make more and more sense, and then you can start seeing the shape develop. The way that I work is I always work by creating first my high poly, then I create my normal map, then create my base color and roughness, and then I create any other maps. The reason you want to create your high poly first is because, especially for something like this, we are going to render our scene with displacement, which means that we are going to use a high poly, which is a black and white image, to get different levels of height and actually deform the geometry. Also, what how it works in Substance Designer is you can use a high poly and convert it into a norm map. So that's the second thing. So for the base shapes, what I want to do is I first need to create some very blobby spots, I would say. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to add something that is called a tile sampler. Now if you go to patterns, you can find all of the tile generators and everything in here. So there's a bunch of them. You can generate everything from bricks to pebbles to stones, so much stuff, any shapes. But what we are going to do is we are going to use the tile sampler. So just drag that in here. And then you get this node. Now for this node, right now what we start off with like some very basic cubes. That's not what we want. We want to go for smooth fall off shapes. Because of this, what we're going to do is we are going to first of all scroll down to pattern and set the pattern from square to paraboloid. Paraboloid is basically one of these shapes. It's like a bolt, basically. You often also use it if you want to like create bolts. Now, these are way too many. We need to have these shapes big, because remember, these are the large construction of the shapes. So I'm gonna set my amount to like 10 by 10. Let's go 6 by 6. Almost, let's do 6 by 8. The reason I do 6 by 8 is because I just want to already give it some deformation like this. Now don't worry, we are going to artificially scale this up later on. And we can do that over here. If we just use a scale, we can set our scale very high. So right now it will just completely blow out. So let's start by just setting it to around 5. And then what you want to do is you want to scroll down and make sure that, okay, so the blending mode is set to max. So now what we're going to do is we are just going to scroll up to position and we are going to start changing positions. So if we set position random up, you can already see it like changing a little bit. If we set the offset just all the way up, there we go. See, so it's a bit difficult to see. You might not be able to see it, but we are going to work with this. So we are going to change this. So before we do that, I just want to go down, and over here, I just want to have a look at my color. Let's do this one. The color, wow, I can't even pronounce that. Basically, color parameterization. I hope I said it right. Multiplier. I want to start by setting that halfway, and we need to actually input a map. So what we are going to do basically is we are going to input a variation map. We are going to do that in this color map. That's why I set this already to 0.5 so that it will show up later on. This is going to be a very blurry, and you will get very familiar with this noise. It's going to be a Pearly Noise. Now it's much easier if I show you what it does, because basically what it does is it will, based upon the levels, the gray, black and white levels of this noise, it is going to be able to change the scale and change how much color there will be in here, which as an effect will give us that you can very clearly start seeing all of these shapes individually. I'll just show you what I mean. So here we have a Pearly Noise. Now this is way too small. We want to go ahead and go to our scale, and we want to set this very large. I'm talking about, let's say, probably around 4. Now, if you want, you can also play around with your random seed. Right now, it doesn't make too much sense, but you will know very soon when, or you can very quickly see like the differences that it makes. So let's set my seed to 2. Let's see, what do I want to? I want my scale to be, yeah, let's set my scale to be 4. Now, there's another note that I need to do, because right now everything is very soft, so we never hit the black. We only hit mid-gray and we hit white. But there's this node. This node is called an auto levels node. And basically all that does is if we add a normal levels node, here you can see that the levels are between this and this shape. Basically what the auto levels does is it pushes it so that the histogram is all the way from black to this side to white to this side. See? That's all it does. But it does it in one node. And that's basically it. So we are going to drag this in our scale map and in our color map. And once we've done that, it's starting to, you are able to see it a bit better. Let's scroll all the way down and just set our color, I'm not going to pronounce it, a lot higher. So what you get now is that you get the blowout gets pushed back, and you can see that now you can see all the individual shapes like this. So let's have a look. Next to this, is there anything else that I want to change over here? You can play around with your rotation if you want. But I am going to actually leave my rotation. The reason I want to leave it because right now it is giving me some kind of like a directionality, and I quite like that. Let's see what else. So I'm just making sure that, because the first one is the most important one, because we are going to drive everything based upon the very first one. So my position random, I'm going to set this a little bit higher. And the reason I want to do that is because I just want to get a few more shapes, something like this. Because right now I felt like with the position random of 1.3, there are only some very large shapes. I want to make them a bit smaller, and often just setting this to around, let's do 2.4, just to keep a nice even number. Here, it just adds like a few more smaller shapes. But I think that is correct. I think this is already what we need, so I am quite happy with this. Now what we're going to do is we now need to blend the very large shapes with slightly smaller shapes with even smaller shapes. So we are now going to just blend this down, because here now we have basically created these ones. See these here really big ones? So those are the ones that we have now created. Now what we're going to do is we are now going to create some of the smaller shapes, which you can sometimes, let's see, here you can see them. See, here is one. It's a bit hard to see with the cuts, but that's why we are going to just completely break it up. Here you can see one. And then after that we are going to start with the even smaller shapes, which are these ones that you can see over here, which are just like all these bumps, basically. So, having explained that, let's go ahead, and you want to just duplicate your tile sampler. And I said we were going to do 3 passes, right? You can do many passes. I'm going to start with 3 passes over here. And all we need to do is we just need to change some small settings over here. So I would say for this one, first things first is let's set our amount a bit higher. And let's make this round. So let's go 10 by 10 over here. Now here, this is just slightly smaller than the top one. For the rest, all of this stuff is fine. The scaling is, yeah, the scaling is fine. I'm fine with that. And let's see, is there, what else do we want to do? Position random is fine. I think we are already ready to go here. Yeah, you know what? I think this is already fine. I just want to get some smaller variation. This one, however, this one is a little bit different. This one is going to have much smaller details. However, we are running out of time. So what I will do is in the next chapter, I will go ahead and I will continue with this. For now, you can just right click on this file in your Explorer and press save. And in your source files, I have a save files folder where I will just go ahead and save it. There we go. Okay, so let's continue with this in the next chapter.